I want to talk about more consequences of decentralization and the fact that once it takes hold, once the technology is released and many places have access to it, well, the society changes in dramatic ways and in ways that takes people by surprise. They're very taken off guard of the developments, of how things have changed. I was watching the news and the Houthis, their military was making a statement that used 10 drones and traveled 400 miles or 500 kilometers to processing facilities, oil processing facilities, and that destroyed them. This is itself a very sophisticated operation, but the reaction of many analysts in the United States is even more strange than what happened. They are accusing other countries like Iran or Iraq to have initiated this, but the technology and the drones, they were all manufactured in Yemen by the Houthis. They might have gotten the technology from the Russians or the Iranians, but it's very strange that Western countries, they don't believe them. They don't believe that like a small country would be capable of such technological or military feats. But this is actually happening, and it's just like once a cat gets out of the bag, you don't know what players are out there that they got access to technologies that are unbelievable. Well, other things that really are interesting is that many Americans, they think that once AI or robotics they come into the market, that the manufacturing companies that make all these machines or make all the products, that they are going to be the only ones that's going to be enriched and everybody else is going to live in the doghouse, which is not true. Because, say, for example, robotics comes out. There's very good robots that can do healthcare or home care as good as a nurse would. Then this technology is not only available to the wealthy corporations, because the way technology evolves or the way manufacturing evolves is that the cost of the units also drops, that there is deflation that's induced by technology, and then you will find that the robots have become so cheap that they're affordable to the average Joe, regardless of how much income he has. Well, actually, I read something similar to this, is that the Chinese are making telecom contracts with African nations, and well, I don't know what's the level of income that the Africans have, Nigerians have, how much monthly payments in phone bills they can afford to give. Probably would be something minuscule compared to what we pay here. But because of technologically induced deflation, and that the cost of the units have been collapsing, these telecom companies from China are able to sell these cell phones, and also able to make money still at the rates that these people can pay, or at the rates that they're able to. And I was also reading that modified the phones so that the battery will last like for many days, because some villages over there, who knows, uh, they don't have outlets, and then the phone has to work because it will be in the field for many days, something like that. This is like the technology is accommodating almost anybody. You could have a couple of dollars and still be able to afford a cell phone, which is very strange in itself. But this is kind of the same line of thinking with what the Houthis have done. They have excellent technology that can do large and important military operations. I don't know how many, a few dollars that they spend on it, and time. Somebody, Russian or Iranian, whoever gave them the technology, and they did all this stuff themselves. And this is a mistake that many people that are in the financial sector make, and they imagine that like companies that were built up in the past, like Apple or IBM, these companies, because of AI or robotics or technological innovations, or because they can get money from the central bank, that they're just going to grow exponentially without any kind of bound, and the rest of us will just become more and more impoverished, which is not true, and which is not also reality. For example, just talking about Apple Corporation, they make very nice cell phones. The technology is often breakthrough, but then there are other companies. Well, I know one. I use Samsung, and the technology is pretty good, just as good as theirs. But the technology didn't come from an American company, and Samsung doesn't have the valuation of Apple, and but they're still able to give very good service, very nice phones, and some of the phones are more advanced or new. They have features that are better than Apple. Well, what I'm saying is that the technologically induced deflation and the evolution in manufacturing or AI or robotics, it not only impacts the cost per unit of any given product, like a cell phone or a drone or a car, it not only impacts them, but because the technology is out and there are many players, it also impacts the asset values, like the entire company. Say there is a telecom company that just started in Vietnam, and there is all this technology that's everywhere, decentralized or open source, and they kind of grab a little bit here and a little bit there, and they make a cheapy phone that just does the exact same thing as Samsung does. But this company was made in Vietnam, and the valuation or what the investors are willing to pay for this company is kind of reflective of the geography, and it will probably be a fraction of what a share of Apple would cost. But then what happens next is that this company that was made in Vietnam and has customers in Vietnam, and they're paying the company, then their income, or in comparison to the valuation of the shares of the company, would be a P ratio that would be like 10, would be like 8, would be like 5. But then that's not the PE ratio of Apple, that has been pampered and nourished and taken care of by the Federal Reserve and all the stupid investors here. Their PE ratio is like, I don't know, 100 or so. What happened in this comparison is that not only the cost per unit of that cell phone that was making money for them collapsed, also cost per unit of the shares of the company collapsed. And this is not the end. There could be another company, another telecom that shows up in Africa. But actually this process of technologically induced deflation has been going on with many things, not just shares of companies or unit prices. It has been going on with many commodities. For example, there was a book somebody wrote called Race to the Bottom. He was studying the technology and the cost behind the t-shirts, which is a more primitive technology, but still the concept is the same as drones or cars or cell phones. Well, actually, when a new technology comes out, like when Apple introduces a cell phone that, I don't know, has not only 3D technology, but also like has some weird technology, like they finally figured out that, hey, how to manipulate electromagnetism to create time effects, like dilation of time, or like imagine you have a cell phone, and the cell phone is able to create a field around you. This field is really runs on a different clock than the time that's outside of the field, like a little time machine on itself. This is very possible because electromagnetism and gravity is connected, and these technologies, they're used extensively in cell phones. Is not out of the realm of reality. This can happen. So when this technology that's very innovative comes out, initially it will have a very important or very valuable price attached to it. But even this such an exotic technology can migrate the same route economically and technologically as a t-shirt would. The price can collapse. The technology does not owe it to any particular entity, whether that entity might be a U.S. government or might be a very nourished and cherished corporation. It doesn't wait for them. The world is awash with open source, with many technologies that have gotten out of the bag, and there is no restriction, there is nothing to stop from anybody to picking up the pieces of this technology and this knowledge and make comparable or even better products and offer it at a cheaper rate. Well, there is economic theory. It's called zero marginal cost society. But the reason many Americans are afraid of AI or robotics or new technologies is because they imagine that a certain group certain personalities or corporations, they are the only beneficiary of such technologies, and everybody else is going to just be left in the dust. But that's not true. It's very hard to stop proliferation of technology or any technology, whether they are nuclear or not nuclear, or there are innovations in cell phones, innovation in devices. There is the concept that I described earlier with personal time machines. This technology exists, and it probably in some drawer in the Department of Defense has it, or some countries they have it. They use it in their planes. Well, the anti-gravity and time element, they are kind of tied together with electromagnetism. But regardless, I think that we are on an accelerating path, that the technology is just going to come out of the closet in many forms and permeate. Well, another thing that helps this process is that there are many users. I don't know what's the density of cell phones in the planet Earth. This density is just simply increasing, and it's going to very unlikely places. So what I'm saying is that once the technology, a new technology, seeps in to a device that has mass appeal, then this is going to go everywhere. And the time lag it takes for it to seep into different societies might be much shorter, might be become like a year or so many months. I don't know what was the time lag for drone technology to seep into the Yemenis military. Might have been like a couple of years, but at our today's world, it might not be a couple of years. It might be just a few months. Well, I could draw other conclusions, and I could say that military situations that were achieved at the earlier time in history, say for example, Israelis were able to make a prison and put all the Palestinians they could get into this prison called Gaza. But that doesn't mean that they use all the technology, but this technology can be now easily superseded by other technologies that are cheaper and more available. I don't know if Palestinians are making their own drones. I think that these barriers are not going to last very long. I don't know what's their timeline, like another 2 months or 3 months. We are talking months. We are not talking years. And also I saw that Lebanese, they were making precision guided rockets. They're making their own drones. There are widespread decentralization of manufacturing weapons and electronics and cell phones and everything they can imagine. And I think it would be impossible to stop this. Well, looking back at human history, we can see that most of the human history, people lived in agrarian societies, which were like very decentralized. Some cities, some concentration of agricultural products, but everything was made and then consumed at each locality. Well, I think that humanity is going towards this same situation, and it will be really doesn't matter if you live in a big city. It doesn't really bring you any advantages, because if you lived in a very small town or even rural area, once that internet line comes into the back of your computer, then, or once you have a cell phone that has all the features that you can contact anybody, once you have WhatsApp, once you have eBay, once you have Amazon, once you have many of these technologies coming to your door, then it really doesn't matter if you're in a big city or if you're African, or this decentralization will change a lot of things. Well, thank you very much for being my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and leave your comment. Oh, thank you for putting up with me and all my weird ideas.